So the group asked me to come and talk a little bit about sort of movement and the exercise perspective of chronic pain and chronic conditions. And as Sven introduced me, my job at the YMCA, we have a whole bunch of wellness programs with a whole bunch of different conditions. So we see a wide range of people. Parkinson's, MS, spinal cord injuries, fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis, sort of runs the whole gamut. And the idea is to get people in and get them moving appropriately and safely. Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. We're going to keep it rather general, and then you can ask questions at the end. That's okay, right? I also encourage you, I know I'm first to speak, but if at any point you need to get up and move, please feel free to do so, okay? I know we've got a break coming up after myself, but if you need to change position, feel free to do that, okay? Right. So I have a 20-month-year-old at home, so this is a really familiar position that I see a lot, but most of us, if not all of us in this room, were able to do that at one point. Do we remember that? No. For some of us, it's a long time ago, right? But I want you to start with the idea and begin with the idea that we were meant to move. We were born to move, okay? We were born with the flexibility and the strength and all of that to acquire these positions, right? As odd as they seem and as impossible as they seem right now to us. Okay, so what's changed from being maybe 2 years old to now? Right? We've all led different lives. We've all had different exposure to different things. She's doing pretty good. Extreme example, right? I don't know how many of us in the room right now could possibly do that as well. It's probably taken a lot of practice, lifelong, but she can still move relatively well with flexibility and strength, just like that toddler, right? So I want you to think that age is not necessarily the barrier that maybe we think it is. A lot of us say, oh, I'm too old to do that anymore. Well, maybe to some degree, but we can always modify what we're doing, okay? And that's key, modification. Okay, and we're gonna do a little movement later. I'm not gonna ask you to do a handstand, promise. Something a little more gentle, but we're gonna move a little bit because it wouldn't be a presentation without me asking you to do a little bit of work with me, okay? So we know that life happens and it throws obstacles in our way. So I'd ask you what changed between toddler and where you are now, right? So we get into poor postural habits. Maybe our job requires that of us, right? Maybe we've injured ourselves. Medications, right? Health problems, lack of energy, lack of time. All of that sort of stuff comes together to create a barrier to keep us from moving, right? And our built environment doesn't necessarily encourage us either anymore to move, right? It's built out of our day. So we have vacuum cleaners that will do the vacuuming for us, right? Those of us that can remember, I can't count myself among that, but before washing machines, right? So the typical day-to-day things that we were required to move and to do, and our bodies were sort of always in motion, we're much less in motion now than we used to be, even just 50 years ago. We all agree on that? Yeah, generally? Okay? So we have to find ways to build movement into our day, right? And it doesn't have to be extreme movement, it can be gentle movement. So I want you to think, as I'm going through this, think of your own health conditions, okay, and what their limitations may be, and you can certainly work within that, okay? In the end, all we're hoping to achieve with more movement is a better quality of life, right? Less pain, maybe more flexibility, maybe better stamina. We've all got a different goal in mind, but better quality of life than what we're at right now is the idea, okay? So if you were here in our first workshop, unfortunately I wasn't, but I went online and did my research of the former presentations. But Dr. Kim Moore spoke about a little bit about detail about the processes of pain and the nervous system and all that sort of stuff. still a mystery, right? We don't know as much as we'd like to know about it, which is why you're here gathering information and why we're always trying to learn and look at research and evidence-based research papers and that sort of stuff. Because it's very individual, right? If you've talked to anybody else that has some form of chronic pain or chronic condition, manifests very differently, right? So some person may be experiencing something and then another person says, oh, I don't know what that would be like, but this is my experience, right? So it's very different. But pain is a potent adversive stimulus for creating salient memories, right? So we talk about our senses creating very strong memories, a sense of smell. You pick up a smell and brings you right back to wherever that smell took you, right? Same thing with pain, okay? And in some of the research papers, I thought this was interesting, but it can be redefined as pain that does not extinguish its memory trace, right? So maybe we did have a traumatic or an acute event happen, and then our body has just sort of hung on to that and hasn't let that go. And it just continues to think, even though the body has healed in that area, that it's still painful, right? So there's lots of systems involved, which makes it a little bit tricky. And you can learn to associate nociception, which is the sensory nervous system's response to certain harmful or potential harmful stimuli, right? With other stimuli. So what something may not have been painful before that happened, it now considers it painful, right? So it just gets broader and it sort of bubbles out. So wherever it originated from, maybe you're feeling it in another area, when that may not necessarily be where the hurt sort of happened, okay? So what we try and do through a bit of movement is to sort of desensitize your body to that movement and that response. In general, pain is a good thing, right? It's our alarm bells, it's our alarm system, right? There's a condition out there where there's no pain, there's no pain response. So people can easily break a bone, they don't know that this is the limit of their elbow and it just snaps, right? So it is protective in a lot of ways, but sometimes that backfires and the signals just keep going, right? And we can't turn it off. So we're going to try and turn it off little by little, and this is where patience comes in. And that can be a really hard thing for a lot of people because we're very much instant gratification these days, right? So we're going to try and find a little bit of patience, okay? So we talked a little about that. So it's not extinguishing, so it's still there even though the movement might not be the culprit of that pain. Okay? And this is another barrier to movement. We talked about time and energy and all that sort of barriers, knowledge as well. But if it's painful, you're not going to want to do it, right? It's not encouraging for you to do it. So we need to find a way to sort of work below that level of pain so that it sort of bumps that up a little bit. Okay? So you're sealing your tolerance here, and you move just below that, and hopefully your body goes, oh, that wasn't so bad. I can handle that. I'm strong enough to deal with that, right? Maybe I'll just do a little bit more next time, staying below that pain threshold. Okay? And then, so we're trying to gradually build that up and catch the body up with it. So how do you apply movement? Okay? There's different ways to do it. Graded exposure is a really effective method. Has anybody heard of that before in terms of exercise and movement? So it's a process by which you slowly and progressively expose yourself to some form of stress in order to make you less sensitive to that form of stress. So we sort of did that with that sealing, right? So slowly building up so that your body doesn't identify it as threatening anymore. Right? Because when our body identifies it as threatening, that's when the pain happens. It gets that response, right? So we need to slowly teach the body, go, this movement, while it may have bothered you before, right at this level, it's okay. For some of us, this could take days, could take weeks, it could take months, right? Depending on what's going on. This is where that patience comes in. And there may be some setbacks too. Right? We can't expect there to be no setbacks, unfortunately. Okay? So the introduction of threatening movements and the right dosage and timing in a way that makes them less painful, and that dosage and timing is the really, really important key. Right? So if I use some of our fibromyalgia participants, they'll come in and they have pain, right? So our goal through movement is to help manage the pain. It's not about increasing fitness levels. It's not about any of that. It's just about trying to get the pain under control, right? Build the tolerance a little bit so that we can get you closer to that point, okay? So the desensitization can happen in one of two ways, through causing a change in the body or a change in the way the nervous system perceives the threats to the body. So we talked about desensitization, so still using the movements to say to the body, it's okay, this is okay, it's not painful, it's not hurting, you can do this level in order that you can, again, increase it, right? So we want to cause adaptation, but not enough to cause or worsen injury. And that's where the dosage and that timing piece comes in, right? There's no point in going gung-ho and then you're off the wagon for weeks because you're recovering, right? So pacing is a really big thing in almost every chronic condition. And that's a hard thing for us to do, right? So if you're gardening and you have so many tasks to do and you need to get it all done because maybe it's going to rain tomorrow, you don't have to get it all done, right? You need to pay attention to your body and give yourself permission to go, well, that's good. I've done enough weeding today, or I've done enough digging. I can revisit it tomorrow. I can revisit it next week, right? It's whatever that recovery time is for you. And hopefully, with a little bit of that desensitization and that movement, the recovery period gets a little shorter, right? So you can push a little more. You have more good days than bad days. That's the ultimate goal. Okay. So the basics of graded exposure is that you want to decrease the perceived threat, right? So there's our ceiling effect. So if your body perceives or your brain perceives that movement as threatening, it's going to give you those pain alarms, right? And that's not what we want. So we need to keep it below that alarm system, so it's not going to go off. So whatever that is for you, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail at the end, right? But it's about sending new information. So the body is used to this pattern that this movement causes pain, and every time I do it, it's going to hurt. So I don't want to do it. Don't do it. Ding, 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 right? So we need to say to the body again, well, let's try this. And that's new information. If it doesn't hurt, if we work at the level before the pain, the body seems to be okay with that. Okay? And it sends the nervous system the feedback that this isn't painful, this isn't harmful. We're trying to shut that alarm down little by little. Okay? And hopefully the nervous system will start to disassociate the movement, the pain with that movement, so that that movement becomes pain-free. That's the ultimate goal. Okay? Same sort of treatment that they would do with phobias and anxieties sometimes, right? That exposure, exposure, exposure. So this is where our repeat, repeat, repeat comes in. Okay? That's where it gets a little repetitive, and again, the patience comes in. So a lot of folks will come into our programs or to the gym and expect to do gym things, right? Bench press, chest press, lots of squats. May not be appropriate at all. It may be a few weeks before we even attempt any overhead movements. We need to turn the pain off a little bit before we do that. Okay? So our goal during a movement program is to send as much good news as possible, which is why we're not pushing you right to your limits. And that's often a misconception of exercise and personal trainers and all that sort of stuff. And we'll talk about the quality of your exercise or your movement professionals that you're talking to, because that's a big deal too. They should know what they're talking about. They should be familiar with your condition, and you shouldn't be afraid to ask them about it. Okay? Again, just like anything in healthcare and your own health, you got to be your own advocate, fortunately, right? So same thing with exercise and movement. Okay, it's your health. If you do something that your body didn't like, you usually end up paying for it afterwards, and we don't want that. Okay, so we want to focus on sending as much good news as possible, so that your body starts to say, I can withstand this stress. This level of stress is okay. I can deal with it. I can take more. I can do this, right? And then it helps to build your confidence levels as well, because the mental health aspect is important too. Okay? Make sense so far? So good? Okay. So I know when I was asked to talk, we sort of wanted to stay away from the word exercise, because people have some pretty strong associations with exercise, right? Just like your response, your pain response can be very strong to certain stimulus. Most people's response to exercise is not necessarily a good one, especially if they've had any sort of chronic health conditions or dealing with pain on a consistent basis. So that would be a correct assumption for most? Yeah. So I'm going to put up exercise by definition. So exercise is an activity requiring physical effort carried out especially to sustain or improve health and fitness. What do we think of that definition? Accurate in a dictionary sort of sense, right? And this is where I want to change your perception a little bit on exercise, because sometimes it is a four-letter word for a lot of people. Okay? Exercise is what you need it to be. Exercise and movement is interchangeable. Okay? Exercise just means it's a little more planned, a little more structured. Right? Movement you have to do to get through your day. So the idea with exercise and any sort of exercise or movement therapy is to create a program that's going to help you get through your day easier. Right? A little less pain, a little less discomfort, a little less fear. Okay? That's what an appropriate exercise or movement program should be doing. Okay? And a lot of folks come in thinking they need to be doing something when that's not necessarily where they're at. And that goes for people that don't have chronic conditions either. Just deconditioned people in general. Okay? So any activity requiring physical effort. A lot of things are physical effort, right? And the idea, and with movement the same, is to sustain or improve health, right? So try not to focus too much on the exercise and what we think of exercise, because some of us have had some really bad phys ed school moments, right? That's usually where it starts, gym class. And then beyond that, right? So you go to a gym and everybody's in spandex and looks awesome, and you're like, what am I doing here? Okay? So different things that people, different experiences. So we did a little handout for you, and I'm not associated with the Arthritis Association, or Arthritis Society, sorry, but this is a handout that we use a lot in our programming at the Y. We found it helpful across the board for many different chronic conditions. So if someone is coming into program and they're really deconditioned or experiencing a lot of pain, this is what we set them up with. Say, we would like you to do this. And we'll lead them through it, because it's about proper movement and knowing your limits. Because again, a lot of people will go in and they have like a shoulder injury and they're like, yes, ouch, right? So trying to help scale folks back and realize that you don't have to do the whole movement, but it's the idea of activating the muscles, right? That can be just as beneficial. So we're gonna try one. We're gonna try two, actually. So since everybody's sitting down, let's do some ankle circles. So sitting in your seat, think about your posture while you're sitting here. I think everyone has enough leg room under the desk there. Think about doing an ankle circle. So let's just do one at a time, because that's a lot of load on your low back if both legs are sticking out. But if you can, right? Ankle circles. Go one way. Good. Other way. We switch feet. Good. Other direction. Lovely. Did anybody notice a difference from one side to the other? Yeah. We're not symmetrical, right? We're very asymmetrical, and if you're a very handed person, maybe your right side is a lot stronger than your left. If you have any chronic conditions, if you have a really arthritic right knee, it's going to be harder on that side, right? So this is where our modifications come in, right? So somebody beside you might be doing something totally different than somebody else, but you can benefit from the same movement. So maybe it's less movement to start with, right? If you had pain during that movement, I would ask you to make the movement a little bit smaller. Okay, so you don't have to go big to get the benefit. And that's usually a misconception as well. It's about the small movements. Okay? Remember our building blocks, right? Start slow, under that pain threshold, slowly bump it up. Okay? Without flaring anything up. We're going to try an upper body one. Watch your neighbors. But this one. So on your sheet, I believe it's number 7. So you're going to put your hands together in front of your chest, and you're going to push out, and then you're going to pull back. Good. Try it again. So if anybody's getting pain on that movement, I want you to make the movement a little smaller. I want you to think, are your shoulders shrugging? Oh, good. Okay. If going to here is it for you, and you have pain out here, you're not going out here. You're going here, and then back. Muscle activation, that's all we're looking for. So find the threshold, work just below it. And then I want you to think about what muscles you're working. So this seems like a pretty simple exercise, right? But if anybody has any shoulder issues or back issues, this can be pretty aggravating, right? So as you push forward, think about your chest muscles doing the pushing. Shoulders are staying down. As you pull back, think about your back muscles, shoulder blades squeezing together. Okay, good. So it is about that activation. Sometimes that's enough. Okay, lovely. So this is considered basically a warm-up for a lot of our programs. This is where people start. This is where the patience comes in. The repetition of them as well. It's really hard to read, which I'm not upset about, but underneath top 10 exercises, it says all exercises should be performed 20 times or as tolerated. Or as tolerated. Key. Okay? So if you do it 5 times and you're starting to feel some discomfort, you're not going to go to 20 times. Okay? Give yourself permission to cut it off there. Maybe after a week of doing it 5 times, I can do 7 now. That's the idea. Pay attention to the small successes. Okay? But this one has been really helpful. Even our folks with COPD and breathing issues, this is really helpful to open up the chest muscles. So even though it comes from Arthritis Society, across the board, it can be really, really helpful for a lot of different conditions. Okay? So is exercise a bad thing? I would argue no, but that's my background. Okay, kinesiology, movement science. It's important to move. It's just finding the appropriate ways to do it. Everybody can move. No matter how seized up you feel, we can find a way to move. Okay? You need to start from where you are, not where you think you should be. Might be a little bit of ego involved for some of us. I had a gentleman in his 80s say, well, I used to carry a canoe over my head. I said, how old were you when you did that? Well, I was 25. Well, fantastic. That's a great memory, right? So let's see, what can we do to help you feel confident in your abilities again, right? You don't have to portage canoes anymore. That's fantastic, right? But hanging on to those sort of memories can be beneficial. It can also be a little harmful. So we just have to temper our expectations, right? For where our body is at in the present right now. And that could be day to day, that could be hour to hour, right? So yesterday we came in, we did a little bit of movement, felt great, everything was good, your balance was on. Today we do it, you're rolling all over the place. Fine, right? The body is a complicated thing and the systems are complicated, so we need to be able to adapt to that. Okay? It should be appropriate and tailored to your specific conditions and level of tolerance. And we want the emphasis to be on prevention of symptom flares and applying adequate recovery strategies. So it's not just about the movement, it's about the recovery from the movement. That tells us that we're making progress. So if you can move without pain, right just below that threshold, and then your recovery after that is good, you didn't have any ill effects, fantastic. That tells us we're getting somewhere. And depending on what's going on with you, pushing into that pain or that discomfort a little bit can be beneficial, but to a certain limit, right? And that's where that knowledge piece comes in. So I would ask you guys, what's exercise to you? Right? Doesn't have to be running marathons. That is not my idea of exercise. Not my idea of fun anyways. Some people, they love that, right? Runners love running, which is great. You gotta find something you enjoy doing. That's key. Okay? Because then you're gonna be consistent with it. And you're gonna enjoy it. There's no point in doing something that you're not gonna enjoy. Somebody told me that I had to get on a treadmill and that's how I was going to get my aerobic exercise. I would not come back and see you again. Right? So if you're talking to somebody about exercise and movement, they should be listening to you. You should feel heard. Okay? So gentle range of motion, exactly what we just did. This is exercise. Okay? Doesn't have to be squats, doesn't have to be what the first two pictures were doing. Okay, it's what you need it to be. Tai Chi, aquafit, any sort of water activity can be really, really good as well. Okay, and again, the level is what you determine it to be. You don't have to be doing a 100-pound bench press to be considered exercise. It's not the most functional thing either. Okay? So basically, in a nutshell, start moving how you want to move. Make sure you're not in pain during the process. And then move a little more next time. Right? Sounds simple. But like anything, it's not easy. Right? Sounds pretty straightforward. And I just wanted to touch on that movement exercise professional again. So my background is registered kinesiologist. There are physios that specialize in chronic pain and chronic conditions as well. You want someone who knows what your condition is, okay? And there are fitness instructors and different people in the community and community centers that have really great training. Please ask them, okay? And any instructor or movement professional worth their salt is going to be really excited that you ask them, okay? It's important because you need to look out for yourself. Okay? And if you're not quite sure what to do about it, you need to find someone who will be able to help you. Okay? So kinesiologists have a registered college. You can look us up. Physiotherapists have a registered college. Look us up. Some chiropractic clinics as well. Very good with prescribing movement. It's not all about the passive modalities, right? And having stuff done to you. You want to be proactive about it. Okay? So check people's credentials. Ask, because they should know. And if they don't know, they should be okay to say, I'm not really sure about that. Let me do a little research, and I'll get back to you. I'm going to talk to my contacts. I know someone who knows a lot about that, so I'm going to check with them. Okay? Because the idea is not to incapacitate you with movement. The idea is for movement to be helping any condition that you're dealing with. And trust me when I say that we can find something for you to do that's going to help. We've seen a lot of folks come through program and seen a lot of great results. So finding your support, right? Finding that proper support is really important. Okay? Perfect. I'm just going to leave you with a last thought. It's important. We should do more. Okay? However that works for you, however you can fit it in, however that's appropriate. But movement is a good thing. Exercise is a good thing. Don't let that word scare you off. Okay? It's what you need it to be. Okay? Perfect.